Welcome to this meeting of licensing. It's been quite a while since we've had one. So first thing we need to do is election of chairman. I will call upon the longest serving member to call for nominations, which I believe would be Steve, wouldn't it? Are you the same? Ladies first, I think, providing that Councillor Mumford doesn't wish to stand to be chairman herself. Over to you.
Right, welcome everybody. We take the first item, which is the election of chairman. Could I please have nominations?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Watt.
A seconder?
I'll second that.
All those in favour? That's Councillor Watt, who now take over as chairman. Thank you.
Just checking that there's no other nominations, is there?
Yeah, should have
no other
that, really.
Nominations? No.
Just because we're all champion at the bit here, aren't we?
Right, thank you, members. Welcome to the first licensing committee for a year, or maybe more. 16th of March, I think, 2017 was the last one. So I will accept the nomination reluctantly for reasons which many of you know. There is one proviso rather. I won't be able to take part in any licensing issues to do with the Mermaid. I've checked with the monitoring officer, and because I'll explain why, I'm captain of their darts team. And I did contact him a couple of weeks ago and said, would this affect my declarations of interest if anything comes up about any of the licensed premises on St Mary's? He said, and I got a reply the other day, and he said, only directly concerning the Mermaid. So for anything but the Mermaid, I won't be able to take part in. So with that proviso, I will accept the nomination as chairman, and thank you for your support. Right, item number 2, agenda item 2, election of vice chairman. Any nominations?
Should I suggest we nominate somebody who's not here as punishment?
Councillor Guy is presently playing golf in Portugal, so I know where he is.
Has anybody expressed a preference?
No.
No, I thought that might.
Is it possible to leave this over till the next licensing meeting? Hopefully it's not 18 months' time.
But the next licensing meeting is December the 20th.
So could we do it there? Is that possible, Andy?
It certainly is. Very much like your scrutiny committee, where you actually haven't got a vice chairman, have you? So it's not a paid position as it stands at the moment. It's fine not to have someone in there, but obviously we encountered the issue when you were obviously away for a scrutiny committee, and rather than the vice chairman coming in, we had to elect a standalone chairman for one meeting. So that is the only issue that could.
Yeah, I am actually in favour of having vice chairmans, but I'm sure this could be left to the next meeting if Councillor Guy is willing to do it again, or there will be more members here, hopefully.
Yeah, thank you. I ought to ask if there are any other nominations.
Yeah, I was going to say, would anybody like to do it, rather than jumping ahead?
Okay. Everybody happy with that then? Item number 3, declarations of interest. None. And item number 4, minutes of previous meetings. There are, in fact, 2. Strangely enough, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us weren't councillors during either of those meetings. So I can't comment on the accuracy of them at all. But anyway, they're there in front of you. The first meeting was on the 2nd of March 2017. Any comments on that?
I'll propose we accept the minutes. I actually was present and Councillor Sims wasn't, so I better propose them, I think. I think it's the meeting on the 2nd of March 2017, and do you want to do the next one as well?
I'll second that, and I was just wondering why I couldn't remember it.
16th of March.
Thank you.
You did attend the 16th of March, so.
I propose we accept the 16th of March ones then.
Right, that's two.
And I assume seconded as well.
Yeah, we second each other.
Thank you. Everyone happy with those? Any comments on those minutes?
And there's minutes on the 22nd of June. I'll propose those ones as well.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't see that one.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
I've got no urgent items, which is item number 5. So we go straight away to part 1, reports requiring decision, and agenda item 5, boatman licensing, the report from the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chairman. I take the report as read. The report in front of you sets out a proposal for further work to be done in relation to boatman's licensing. As stated in the report, the system of boatman licensing has been in operation for a very long time. It was established back in 1938 and has developed over time a little bit. Following the incident of the surprise, I think a number of issues emerged as linked to the licensing process that would benefit from a review of the process and procedures as a whole, and subsequent discussions with the MCA have led to this paper. In the paper, I think it sets out the issues that are at hand, and a number of options have been reviewed in how we could take this forward. The paper proposes the option number 4 as the preferred option, which does provide a review of the current system, but most importantly establishes a clear new policy around the boat licensing arrangements. And the reason that is important is that in the current system, the accountability and responsibilities and actions that need to be taken by certain groups are not clear. And therefore, the policy will clarify this and put this on the records. In order to deliver that option, there's a number of work streams that have been suggested in the paper. And as I said, the recommendation to members is to approve the review of the process, the boat licensing process, and to have a new process, including a clear policy in place for the season 2019. Any questions?
Mr. Sims.
Well, we have 4 options. One of them isn't, 3 of them aren't options at all. Because it would just cause carnage. So I would propose that we run with the recommendation, which is option 4. But in my limited experience of this, I think we found the MCA tend to be very, very willing to be very, very hands-off with the sillies, which I can understand to an extent. But there have been instances where I think we've been in a bit of a legal limbo with respect to not so much licensing, but enforcement and things like that. So, yeah, I would propose option 4, given that we don't have any other options, and heartening to think that strengthening the current system is in there as well.
Yeah. Can I respond to that? I think it's an important point, and I think to stress is that the review and the subsequent policy that will be established will need to provide assurances to the MCA that safe operations of boating is in place. Yeah? And that is really quite important, because the MCA, as you are all aware, issue BMLs, or boatmaster licenses. Those boatmaster licenses are endorsed through and with local knowledge for the Isles of Scilly, for it to be able to be valid, if you like. And so therefore, it is important that the policy and the process, including the risk management that comes as part of it, and the audit procedures, give the MCA sufficient assurances that they will be able to issue the local knowledge endorsement.
Yeah, that's perfectly correct. The local knowledge endorsement, incidentally, was introduced to our to the BMLs for Scilly after I wrote to the MCA in 2006, and I wrote to them with the reasons why I felt there was a direct need for local knowledge endorsement, or LKE, to be applied to BMLs because of and I listed all the dangerous, all the reasons why a stranger from outside, even though he might have a BML license, shouldn't be able to operate commercially without local knowledge. And that was endorsed by the MCA in 2006. So I think that, for instance, that is very important. Secondly, I did attend a harbour user group meeting last night, and several boatmen were there, and I went through Teo's report and highlighted the fact that option 4 was a preferred option, and it received unanimous approval. The boatmen in general in Scilly, I haven't met one yet who doesn't want the local authority to continue to be the licensing authority. Councillor Mumford.
Could I just ask what the position is at the moment? How are their licenses at the moment? Because this has been going on for some time, I believe,
Well,
these negotiations.
For a number of years, of course, the council have been administering the licensing process, and that entailed a test of local knowledge, and on the basis of that test, boatmen would receive a license, and either an AA, BB, CC, DD, or EE. So that process has been in place, and the council have successfully administered the process. Internal audit looked at the process, and they were content that the administration of that process was correct and was adequate. However, because the process is not very clear, it is not very clear what actually this means in terms of enforcing it and in terms of managing the process. Hence, the MCA do not have sufficient assurances that the process provides safe operation. So they are content at the moment that safe operation is in place. However, they need more assurances to... So
the old system is actually working at the moment still?
It's still in place.
Where they go out and... Do they still have to have a councillor? Do they still have to have a councillor on the boat with the examiner?
The current system does, but there's now an option, of course, that's part of the review of the policy, including the testing, including a review and improvement of the syllabus to put new...
yeah, because I've been out a couple of times and I thought, really, you know, this is a bit ridiculous, because I don't know anything about boating, whether they're doing their job properly or not.
That's right. The current examiner I've been out with every test that he's done.
Good. Well, you know a lot about boating, I don't.
And congratulated on the way you put together the boating licence syllabus, which is a general A in this report. And that has received tacit approval from the MCA, although I doubt they consider that in very detail. And so the vote have actually seen it as well and approved it. So, yeah, congratulations to Joe.
Yeah, very good.
See the work streams. Are the MC? I mean, it looks like work stream number 4 is going to be the one that is the most long-winded and contentious one. I agree in enforcement arrangements with the MCA. Are the MCA on board with this timescale? Are they aware of? They're obviously aware of the implications of not getting something in place by season start in 2019, but have they got enough impetus to do something with us?
Yes, MCA is very keen to get more clarity. The MCA have also made it very clear to the local authority that the MCA does not have the capacity nor the knowledge to administer the process as a competent navigational authority. So therefore, the MCA will be looking at local partners to develop a model and a system and a process which provides them with the assurances. So that's what the system needs to do. My view is that by having a very clear policy with clear flow charts, yeah, in terms of what action needs to be taken at which incidents, will give the MCA the clarity and the assurances that the licenses or certificates or whatever you wish to call them are providing those assurances.
And the local partners are on board with this as well?
They will have to be. Yeah.
Okay.
They'll have to be.
This is clarification, really. Now, the Scillies, we have an awful lot of rocks and an awful lot of boats, certainly compared to anywhere else in England. Are we the only area that I mean, I imagine in Scotland there must be similar areas in terms of rocks and boats, but are we unique in England to have this local knowledge thing?
Well, we're not. There's a number of areas in the UK, and the Thames is a particular big one, where local knowledge endorsement is required. However, where we are unique is that for the Isles of Scilly, there is no what you call competent navigational authority.
Yeah.
Yeah? So for the Thames area, for instance, there is a competent navigational authority. And by the virtue of being the competent navigational authority, that authority is able to enforce and to manage that process.
So
that doesn't exist for the Isles of Scilly.
So in essence, there is no other model we could just run with?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I can endorse that. We, as far as I know, we were the first authority to write to the MCA, highlighting the dangers of a one-size-fits-all BML, which is why they quickly, I think it was, they received it on the 6th of July, and by the 10th of July, we had a letter back saying that they accepted the LKE endorsement on the BMLs. But we're not alone. There are several other, in England, by the way. I think the MCA is England, not UK. So Scotland is another organisation. Councillor Hicks. Legg, sorry. I was thinking of St Agnes.
Thank you, Chair. As a commercial fisherman, I can testify to the importance of a local knowledge endorsement. The charts in this area leave a lot to be desired. Could I ask what the consequences of not having a local knowledge endorsement would mean for, say, cruise ships?
Sorry, what do you mean?
Okay, so there's...
I think I know what you mean, but not entirely. Do you mean for getting into the waters?
So the cruise ships themselves can come into the islands, but were they to try and distribute their passengers themselves, they have no knowledge of these waters.
Correct. So at the moment, there's a derogation in place for cruise ships to go through using clearly navigable channels, as they call point to point. So cruise ships, their own boats, in theory, should not veer away from the navigable challenges or the key-to-key points. I think the review and the policy, subsequent policy, is an opportunity to clarify that and maybe tighten the arrangements for cruise ships coming in.
Yes, could I just add to that? The arrangement is from memory, because this came into play about 5 years ago when I was actually the licensing officer. The arrangement is for cruise ship tenders to only use Carnear Quay, and few of them did. But that's all. They're not allowed to do around the Eastern Isles and so on. We had an issue a year ago when several Zodiacs were released from a cruise ship in Crow Sound, and they were taking sightseeing guests around the Eastern Isles, and we stopped that straight away. The MCA stepped in and waved a big stick at them. So, but there is one agreement in place that if they're in St Mary's Roads and they want to land on Tresco, then they can use Carnear because it's relatively straightforward. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on that point, surely if there is a licence required to go outside the normal channels, the pilot in charge will be in charge anyway, and you would be actually breaking the bylaws or the regulations if you actually released, for example, Zodiacs to go amongst the rocks.
Yeah, quite true.
I think this is a very important matter, actually, because one of the highlights, one of the things that the visitors come to these islands is to do the boat trips. And over the years, I think that, with all due respect to the fishermen present, there are less people with comprehensive knowledge of going everywhere. I remember one of the lessons I learned when I very first came, that somebody who fished at the back of St. Martin's would never go down the Western Rocks, and even though he'd spend his life there. So there's very few people who have enough knowledge to actually go between the islands, everywhere. So the licenses are very specific. And on that point, I'd just like to say, I think it's very difficult to define the areas without some sort of map or chart. There's some very nice pictures here, some pleasure boats. We know what they look like, but I think that, if you're going to define areas, you've got to actually draw a line on the chart so that mariners know, where Broad Sound ends or Northwest Passage belongs, because just to specify it, it's woolly even on the chart.
Which is exactly what the current process does. The Appendix A is a draft of a new syllabus.
Yeah.
The syllabus which is in place at the moment is very rudimentary and is based on MCA guidance, but it's very rudimentary. So what we've endeavored to do in trying to improve the system is to expand and to start to get a more comprehensive syllabus to go forward, which clearly will be part of the review process.
Yes, Councillor Davis, there is actually a chart which is issued to applicants, which specifies which is
Thank you.
D, C, B, and A.
I'm sure there must be.
Drawn on it.
Yeah, exactly so. But I feel the recommendation, there's only one choice, isn't there, if Scilly is going to continue as we are. We have to apply the local knowledge. The MCA quite clearly are not capable of, getting a lifetime's experience of working amongst the rocks. So I would like to see the recommendation beefed up enormously, including the word strengthen, because clearly we are vulnerable. And this is one of the things that we should really be protecting in these islands.
Well, right from the very start, I've always stressed the safety aspect of licensing with the MCA, which is, as I said, which is one of the factors why they allowed us to impose a local knowledge endorsement. Councillor Roger.
You mentioned, Chairman, that you met with some boatmen the other evening and they endorsed the Chief Executive's paper here. Had they also picked up on the substantial increase in licensing fees?
Well, I did say...
Was there a reaction to that?
No. I did say, in actual fact, what part of the review will be to look at... the MCA, when Teo and I met them in Falmouth, where they sort of swayed towards a 5-year licence, which brings it in line with the BML, rather than an annual renewal, which is something which the review could look at. And as for the financial implications, I did read that out, the aim to be cost neutral. And I think this is something which the chairman of the council has also mentioned, that as long as it pays for itself, that should be sufficient.
Meaning the cost of the work will be passed on to the boatmen, the boating licenses.
Yeah, so it doesn't fall onto the taxpayer in general, but it should be paid for itself, but cost neutral, not to make a profit. When I drew up, I remember doing this years and years ago, when I think Dave Corners asked me to, when he was assistant treasurer, he asked me to draw up how many hours I did a year on licensing, which I did. And then we worked out what the cost of a license would be to cover that part of my salary. And that's where it came from initially.
So the boatmen were there the other night, basically forewarned as forearmed.
Yeah, absolutely.
I propose the recommendation, Chairman.
Second. All those in favour?
Thank you, Chairman. It does, as it says on the tin, it is an overview of what we've been up to over the past, since the last time we had a committee meeting, basically. It's much the same. Obviously, the types of licenses we administer haven't really changed, and that's a testament to the law not really changing. If you have any comments, I'll be glad to hear them, or any questions.
I've just got one question. Oh, sorry. My mic went off. I just got one addition, actually, to the list of. It does say not an exclusive list of legal powers relating to licenses. When I went to the licensing conference by the LGA in February this year, one of the main discussions was on pet breeding. And that perhaps could be added to the list there. So although you do add that it's not an exclusive list, I think pet breeding might be added to it.
It's not comprehensive. It's a highlights reel.
Yeah.
I mean, even with this list, a vast percentage of what we do goes into 2 or 3 areas, and the rest are very much as and when we get applications, we have to deal with them. As set out in law. So they are there. We have protocols for dealing with these applications. We have policies. I say you can have a policy later on to do with gambling. As to how much people use them, it's, you know, we see what sort of applications we get over the course of a year or the course of a lifetime of a policy, but we have to be ready.
Just one quick question before Councillor Marcus. In paragraph 11, on the section on personal licenses, I did have a personal license which lapsed a couple of years ago, and I just wondered if it, in actual fact, because of change in the legislation, whether I've still got it. But maybe you could look into that. Let me know.
I can't remember the actual date, but until that point, I think we used to get a fee as well every time they renewed.
Yeah,
but
£10.
But it was a bit of law that, obviously from the local government, the Licensing Act 2003, they at the time went, okay, this will last for 10 years. As the 10-year date got nearer and nearer, they suddenly thought, actually, we could do without this. Let's just make it in perpetuity.
Right, so possibly still be a full licence holder.
Possibly.
Councillor Marcus.
Yes, yeah, paragraph number 4, staffing. Obviously, Andy, you're doing licensing at the moment. Is there an update on when is the resolution of this? Is there?
That's not really for this committee to actually discuss at the moment, other than to say that arrangements have been made to fulfill the duty of the licensing officer. Andy Thomas has been appointed to that on a temporary position until the final arrangements are done.
Well, there is a recommendation so the committee note the report. Well, that's fairly straightforward, I think, and give consideration to forming a trading working group that will operate as set out in paragraphs 28 and 29, without looking at it directly at this moment, a committee of, well, not a committee, but 3 people, a minimum 3 councillors on that. I know that Councillor Rogers is quite keen to be on that.
Chairman, I think I'll go into more detail on that in the next paper. So if you like, we could just note the report, move on to the next paper, and there's a bit more in there about street trading and fixed site trading.
Well, if members are happy with that, we'll move on. We'll note the report, move on.
Yeah, I'll propose that we note the report.
Okay. All those in favour, yes, and none against, no. Right. So the next report then, again, looking at Andy, is the
It's me again.
licence work plan.
It's a licensing work plan, and I've set it out for 3 years because there are some things that we need to get done, and we do have a certain capacity for the department as it stands, and not everything needs to be done at once. So there are some dates that are fixed and some that are not. Some things it's timely to look at. Some things, you know, we could take a little bit more time over. So it's all set out in the draft timetable at 8. The most pressing thing at the moment, from my point of view, is the gambling policy, because it is about to run out as such. So we do need to move fast on that. Another pressing thing, I guess, would be to look at street trading in terms of being ready for the next season. So obviously those two things, as far as I'm concerned, should be to the fore of a work plan, and everything else can start to follow over the course of this next year and the year after.
Yes, well, recommendation 1 is actually run over from the last report. The members agree the work plan for 2018-19-20 and confirm the membership of the working group for street trading indicated at LWG1 in section 8 of the report. And as I mentioned earlier, I think Councillor Rogers is keen to be on that working group.
Can I suggest that we don't limit membership of the working group and just say that a minimum of 3, but no maximum, as I believe is set out somewhere in the report?
Sounds very sensible to me. Any comments on that?
From my point of view, Chairman, it's more, I really don't mind how many people are on it at all. Like you say, it's a very good suggestion to have at least 3 and have it open to any maximum. It's just being able to have meetings a bit quicker, kind of out, and then it can feed back to the licensing committee.
Yeah.
When it's come up with what it wants to suggest.
Councillor Mumford.
We are missing quite a few people here today. So I think it's difficult for some people to make a decision, you know. I wouldn't mind being on it, but I have got a lot of work on with scrutiny. But I think perhaps if we could ask some of the, is it possible to ask some of the other councillors if they would like to send an email around, Andy, and see what you get back?
If you're happy for me to do that, I'll do that. Yeah. Form part of the recommendation.
At the moment, I mean, you know, but if someone else that doesn't have quite so much work to do, I would prefer that, because I do have a lot of work on, but I don't mind doing it.
I will contact all the members. I will make the offer to everyone. It could be that we have 2 or 3 meetings over the course of the next few months. I'm sure at one meeting I'll have a set of people, and then the next meeting I might have a different set of people, but we'll get there.
Well, okay. Yeah, but it'd be better to have the same all through, wouldn't it, really?
It would, but...
Yeah, I know it doesn't work like that, because the attendance is bad today, isn't it, again?
Okay, well, members are happy with that. Andy will add that to the recommendation. That we do form a working party, a trading working party, based on the response from his emails. Okay, all those in favour of that that amendment? Yep, good. None against. Very good. Statement of gambling principles next.
Do you want me to add pet grooming to the timetable?
Yes, good idea. Yeah.
Who knows? Might have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, the statement of gambling principles. If you've read through the policy, it's quite dry. It's based on Cornwall's policy. We had a different looking policy previous to this, and obviously we still do. We're still under it. Obviously, as we're now more aligned with Cornwall in terms of our enforcement of things in licensing and our legal opinion that we get, and some of the officers that we use, for example, Kevin Hill in the licensing department, he's very much aligned to the way that Cornwall has set out their gambling principles. It's very broad strokes usually. There's not going to be a lot of difference between this document and another one in, say, Oxford, or there'll be small margins, but ostensibly we're very close to Cornwall in terms of our approach to this, in my view. I've made tweaks to it where I think it's appropriate. If members wish to add further tweaks to it, obviously this is the forum to do it in. And at that point, when we're happy with the draft policy, it can then go out to public consultation and from memory, I think the last time we did it, we didn't get anyone from the public approaching about the document. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case again. The only thing you do have to do as such is to reaffirm a no casino principle. I think it's called no casino resolution. You have to do that every 3 years. It's not something the licensing committee can determine. It has to be determined by the full council, by the local authority. If you want to do it.
Would that mean it has to be determined by full council? So does that have to come as a recommendation from licensing?
Yeah.
I see. Right, I got you.
Yeah, just to add to that, one statistic I brought back from the licensing conference in February this year was the fact that there are 500,000 recognised people with gambling problems in England. That doesn't include Scotland and Wales. Wales is about 25,000, I think, so a bit less. Mind you, population is less. So it's something which I think the council are very wise to keep a lid on, and I would certainly approve paragraph 6, the no casino resolution.
So it's paragraph 8 about the responsible body to advise on protection of children from harm. Previously, this was our Children's Trust Board. Is that correct, Andy? And is there any? Just moving it to the SCB seems to make sense. But are there any positive or negative implications of that?
I think it was the Director for Children was named. I think Cornwall used the local Safeguarding Children's Board. Obviously, we're part of that. We also have a Children's Trust Board, like you say. So it's really up to you as to who you place your trust in to advise on our issues over here in terms of protecting children.
Thank you.
Well, there are two parts. So, sorry, Councillor Mumford.
I'd just like to propose recommendations 1 and 2.
And a second of that?
I'll second that.
Are all those in favour? And clearly none against. Passed. Thank you. That brings us to the end of the meeting at, what is it, nearly 1:15?
Thank you, Chairman.
2:15. Could I, before we close, could I just congratulate my nephew sitting beside me on the clarity of these reports? I thought they were excellent. I've already told him privately, but I would like it minuted.
Just to say, we're going to have another meeting in December.
Yeah.
And that's as a result of the gambling, just so you're aware. So once we get the loads of consultation responses in, I'll have a bit of time then to sit down. It might take 3 or 4 minutes to go through them. But at that point, then we can, licensing can then, if they want to, confirm that is what they want the policy to look like. And at that point, it then goes to council. But yeah, that's the reason we have another one scheduled in December.